Okay. So you really want to know, huh? Fine. I'm gonna start by telling you this. And this is important, so listen up, man. Your entire life, this one and many others, you've been a god who uses its absolute power to make yourself powerless. Entire cultures, especially this one, have all been afraid of their weaknesses, supposedly. When in reality, they've all been afraid of their power. This goes beyond the matrix of reality. This is something much deeper than that. This is eternal. This is fully realizing your consciousness. This is infinite. This is evolution. This is our divine right.
Welcome everybody to the podcast, Bootsy Greencast. Today I have an amazing guest, Anthony Jeannot. He is a stand-up comedian by way of Australia in Great Britain and is a man of the world. We've been talking a lot about it. He's having a cold pint right now. I want to go ahead and plug my sponsors, Content Safe, which I didn't pull up on the web to screen share for now, but contentsafe.co. They're amazing. They're going to make sure that whatever expletives and deletives that we say on this podcast remain on the internet forever and ever. So Anthony, no pressure, but welcome so much to the podcast. I appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks for having me, dude. I think I said before we got on, I'm a listener myself, so excited to be here.
Oh, dude. As soon as I read your message, I was like, oh, I got to have this guy on. He's a comedian. You got a special. It's on Spotify. It's on Apple Music. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about that, please.
So I had been doing comedy for best part of sort of 7-8 years back home. And one of the things about doing, and I reckon it would trip out a lot of American comics, is that the way you get better reputation and better stage time back home is via the festivals. You don't really do it via the clubs because it's a much smaller scene, right? And it seems ridiculous. Like coming to London now, it's like, of course you should be able to tell a joke before you get people in the room for a goddamn hour, right? Like, of course you should learn that. But back home, there's kind of no other mechanism. So you start doing your hour, and then as you're doing that, you're doing like opens in between, but there's enough stage time that you can kind of get on stage for 5 minutes 3-4 times a week. But that's kind of, if you're really hustling, that's what you're doing. So you get, like early on, you get your hour out and you do it 30 nights a week. And so I did maybe 4 of them in a row. And then I think Australian comedy kind of bottlenecks real quick, where it's just like, there's only, maybe 10 people who can make a real good living of comedy back home. And then there's a bunch of people eating beans on toast. And, I was like, I could sit around in the beans on toast crew, or I could, go explore a bit more. And so I came over to London. And one of the cool things was it meant when I was doing Edinburgh Fringe, I could, build a network here and do a lot of gigs before I went to Edinburgh, because I was here for a year. And the show that I put out, I was like, you know what, that I've been doing, this is my 5th sort of hour. This is the best one. And nobody at home got to see it. Like, they had to watch me doing my hours before I could even tell a goddamn joke. And then now I put the best one out and it's overseas. It didn't seem fair. So I thought I may as well record it so they could make sure they knew that I learned how to tell a joke somewhere along the line.
Dude, that's awesome, man. I got a lot of respect for anybody who can stand on a stage for an hour and make people laugh like that. I think the longest set I've done so far in my little comedy career is probably like 20 minutes, dude, because an hour is a damn long time. I mean, 5 minutes seems like forever when you're first starting out, going up there and telling your joke. And like, I might get into 3 minutes and start forgetting punchlines, which is like literally the worst plague the stand-up comedian can have. It's like, man, I'll blow through the premise sometimes, forget the punches. And it's a hell of an art form. And it's, like I said, man, I got nothing but props for you. If you've done hours and hours and you've got a whole special out, that's fucking amazing. You should definitely pat yourself on the back for that one.
The brain's a cruel trick, right? Because you forget one punchline, and then the whole rest of whatever time you're on stage, you're like, oh man, I can't believe I forgot that punchline. And then you forget the next one and it compounds real bad. I mean, that's a design flaw in evolution, right? Like you shouldn't do that to you. But yeah, it's been cool. It's been fun. I think one of the things, like I said earlier, one of the cool things about starting doing hours before you have the chops to write the jokes is that, for me at least, and what I like about comedy and the kind of comedy I like, was that I realized that I wasn't going to write an hour's worth of jokes, right? And so I thought, rather than telling, 20 minutes worth of jokes that I really like and 40 minutes worth of half hob job, and then it was my mum all along, bullshit. Instead of that, I was like, you know what I can do? I can like, in between the jokes that I want to get to, what's the story I want to tell? And so I learned how to do almost like my first solo shows were almost storytelling hours with a couple of jokes just to keep people listening. But that meant by the time I got to the show that I did in Edinburgh, and even coming to the UK was really cool, because in Australia, because we have a festival culture, audiences tend to trust that you'll get to the punchline. And maybe just laid back Australian culture, like, yeah, he'll be right. He'll get there in the end, love. Let him talk. He'll get there. Whereas you come to the UK and they want punchlines, like bam, 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 you got to do it. And so by the time I got to do my hour, it was like, okay, I got better at writing those punchlines, but the skill of like building the story in a way that is easier to remember, because I'm not remembering individual jokes, I'm remembering the narrative. And then also in a way that means that, because keeping people's attention for an hour with joke is hard. So, building a story and taking them down a bit emotionally and giving yourself, now the jokes are going to hit harder again because you're not so fatigued at like just expecting to laugh. All of those skills were built before I actually had the skills to write the jokes, I guess.
Very cool. So what's the name of your special?
Stand-up comedy album, because I didn't want to lose one motherfucker because they Googled it wrong or whatever. I was like, how do I make this unmissable?
Somebody's been reading marketing books, bro.
That's my day job. It's my day job. I also did think, I wonder if people in Spotify just search stand-up comedy album, and if they do, I want to be there.
That's smart, man. I love that. That's great. And I like the idea, like story narrative is really cool. And you're right about the emotional ups and downs. I think people want that, right? Like they want to go on a journey. They don't want to just sit there and laugh the whole time, like blah, blah, blah. Look how clever I am with all my one-liners, It's like, Rodney Dangerfield, he came and he was amazing. And, and so we all need to do something different. But I like that a lot, especially for like an hour, because you want to put people's emotions in their stomach, either heart in their stomach, and be like, oh my god, and then what happened? Now they're engaged. They know you have a story to tell, and if you can make that funny at certain points, then you're exactly right. I think where the laughs are actually going to come harder as a result because of the differential and the emotion.
Yeah, and I think if you think of it like a bit like a 3-course meal, right? Like, or at least, of course, I'm going to go to food because I'm a dude who loves to eat, right?
Oh, we can all relate, bro. Don't worry.
It's kind of like what you want on the top is small bits with some real flavor. You want your hard-hitting jokes that really like, boom, you're away. And then in between that, you want, for every like couple bits that make you think or feel, you want to balance that with jokes, right? And that's kind of it, like, two parts clever jokes, 2 parts emotional, 2-part dick joke. You get to the end and everybody's had a good time.
That's good. Yeah, it's like a jambalaya kind of philosophy. You've got all the different ingredients that everybody can kind of enjoy some part of that flavor. I like that as a philosophy. That's really, really good. So as you're drinking that beer, tell us spiritually, like what kind of things you like to talk about, and also like, what kind of shapes your philosophy as a performer? What are you trying to give to the audience? What's important to impart?
That's a really cool question, and one of the kind of questions I kind of expected. So I'm glad you asked. I think, like, for me, right, what I loved about comedy before I started performing was actually, you know what, you can be an academic or you can be a philosopher and you can think a lot about the world, but the problem is those people only talk to each other, right? Nobody's going to watch them. So what I loved about stand-up comedy is you could trick people into listening to shit they don't care about. You can trick people into to listening to what you think about humanity and evolution and stuff like that. Just by putting some silly stuff in there, they're going to listen, right? And so for me, what I love doing on stage is going, okay, what's a big problem or big thing that I'm thinking about, a big idea, and then what's the smallest, most relatable version of that story that I can tell, so that I'm not asking them, I'm not lecturing anybody. I'm not getting on stage and being like, what I think about the economy is. It's like, no, here's my story about being broke. And off the back of that, maybe I can make you think about why this is the case, right? And so that's what I like to do on stage is like, I do a lot of jokes about, like intergenerational inequality, but it's never about like that. You wouldn't know that hearing it. That's just the way it is in my head. And then I tell those stories. And I hope that off the back of that, maybe somebody who really loved the show, like 9 out of 10 people won't get that's what I'm talking about. But maybe if you really love the show, you'll go home and you'll talk to your friends about it. And then all of a sudden, now that's what you're thinking about and talking about. And that's what I think is cool.
No, that's way cool. Yeah, subtext. Like obviously, yeah, you're not, because I've learned this too. If I get up there and I start spouting my philosophy and all, like, man, does the audience like hate that? My friend one time asked me, he was like, "Have you ever been booed off stage?" And then I was like, "No," and he was like, "Well, why not?" But I was like, "Well, first of all, that sounds terrible, but secondly, it's because I learned not to continue talking about what my philosophy is on stage, because people are just like, goof. But like, you can implant a little bit of subtext, you can make some points. And I think that is, again, the beauty of comedy for sure.
Yeah. And it is the case of like, so I did have to learn the hard way a bit. I think there was a period of time where I thought I was Bill Hicks and I could just, say the stuff and people would applaud. Yes, finally someone said it. But the problem is we're in 2020. People have said all the shit now. You're not saying things for the first time. Nobody's just clapping because they heard you say a thing. You got to still make it interesting. But what I think is cool is that it teaches you, and this is something I think if you are in any kind of profession where you are dealing with people regularly, marketing, sales, like project management, anything, comedy teaches you to listen in a way that I don't think anybody else ever has to. Because if you don't listen and learn when you say something to the audience, oh my God, that's going to suck for you. Because if you tell a bad joke, the shame washes over you. Like you can smell it in your nostrils. The minute that joke feels flat, like it sucks. So you have to listen to people because otherwise you're going to keep feeling that way.
Yeah. Oh man, that's so good. And yeah, the audience really is the editor, and so I guess, you could take something like outer intention, right? Like that idea from Transurfing where it's like, I'm here to, like, it's not about me and my philosophy coming on stage and smashing you over the head with like some great ideas and look how brilliant I am, like what an incredible way to fail on stage, instead, like you said, I love that point where it's like, well, Bill Hicks, he's already said everything. George Carlin, they've already said everything. Like I can't reiterate this because then I'm just being unoriginal. So how can I, make it fun for the audience and, maybe play on some of these ideas? That's really, really smart. So as far as like writing, can you talk a little bit about like writing and how you started that process and maybe how it's been refined?
Yeah, so I think when I started out, I made the mistake of wanting, it's a security thing, right? You want to know the joke. And so I would write meticulously jokes. What's this idea? What are all of the things I can think of? How do I pull out punchline? And then I'd get on stage And do you know what? Again, a little bit like not wanting to be a person with an opinion on stage. You also don't want to be the person who's clever on stage, you know? You don't want the audience to think this is you showing off for a bit. And I think I fell into that trap where my jokes were, they were tied and they were punchlines, but they were jokes that felt sterile, I guess. And so what I had to learn to trust to do, and it just comes from being on stage a bunch, because I think when you start out, if you do one bad gig out of 10, it's 10%, but that's like 1 out of 10 gigs that you did sucking really makes you go, oh, I don't know if I can do this, right? But if you do 100 gigs and 10 of them suck and they're spaced out, you go, oh, well, I know I can do this because it worked 90 times. So it's just, as that number gets better, it gets easier to take risks. And so the way I write now is I have an idea that I think is funny, like base idea and where I want to get to. And I'll get on stage and hope that I panic myself into a punchline. Because that way I'm talking in my stage voice, not in a written voice. And I'm giving myself the freedom to explore it on stage. And so the first time you hear any one of my jokes, again, and it comes from a little bit from starting where they give you a lot of time, the first time I tell any joke probably takes me 1.5 minutes to get to the punchline. Maybe that punchline's good, maybe it's not. But then once I've figured that out, then you figure out, okay, how do I make that stronger? And then how do I put jokes to get to the big joke that I want to? And then all of a sudden it's a bit. But to start off with, it's just, I know the idea and I know where I want to get to, and how do I make these things combust in a way that the audience go, bang, that's the joke.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, I like that. I like that approach. You know, because it's difficult. Like you sit down and like you try to write a joke. I'm like, dude, that's the perfect way to attain enlightenment. Good luck. You know what I mean? Like my mind is so empty, you know, like I don't meditate anymore. I try to write a joke. And like that's enough, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And it is exactly like meditation in that the harder you work on it when you're out of practice, the harder it is, because all of a sudden you start thinking about doing the thing instead of doing the thing itself. And so that's why I think getting on stage, and again, it's why it takes time and practice and actually just getting on stage over and over again, because actually doing it is how you create the thing. By actually getting, if I think for me, the big thing is, and I do say panic myself into a punchline quite deliberately, because it's the adrenaline and it's the energy of being on stage, because I could be, there's nothing at risk if I'm sitting at home and writing on paper. There is nobody accountable. Again, you don't feel that suckiness. So it is quite honestly being in that space, in that moment, co-creating, as you said, the audience is the editor, co-creating the joke with the audience, letting them tell you what's funny. And that's how I like to do it. But again, it does just take the confidence to be in that rhythm, because another thing that I didn't have when I started off with, and another reason that I wanted the joke books, is because now I've done enough gigs that if the gigs, like I know how to start strong so that audience trusts me, so that if a joke sucks, my 5 minutes isn't railroaded. I'm going to win them back. And I you've got the stagecraft to respond to the joke not going well, and maybe you'll get a laugh just off, you know, the way you integrate that into the live experience. They're all things that only come with time.
Yeah. Yeah, I absolutely, I know that to be true. One of the biggest things too is just like stage fright, you know, like doing stand-up is completely, because I was a musician for years and years, and it's different when you're up there, you got an instrument, there's other people on stage and all that. But like you get up there, you just have a microphone and everybody's looking at you like, all right, you're funny, huh? Make me laugh, motherfucker. Like, you know, like
comedy is so ridiculous. Like when you think about it, what it is it's you going, hey, everybody, I've got something to say. Everybody shut up. I've got a microphone. Nah, turn the lights off. I don't want to see their faces as I say it. Nah, this is important. And it's going to be funny. And then so much of comedy is surprise. And you're going, nah, but it is going to be funny. And then somehow in that environment, after you've been, like if you did that at a party right? Everybody's having a good time because we're in pubs. We're not in theaters. We're in pubs. If you did that at a party, you went in, you're like, nah, I got something to say. Turn the lights off, cut the music. Everybody shut up. I got something to say. Everybody hates your fucking guts and nobody's laughing no matter how brilliant that joke is, right? And yet we do it weekly.
I know, it's so funny. What an interesting and strange thing. I don't even understand where the desire comes from, but but
I mean, people do trivia, so you know we're one up on that.
well said. Yeah, I've never understood that either. Oh man, yeah, not a big fan of trivia either, but yeah, it is a weird thing. I guess the reason why, I guess I was ever drawn to it was to really kind of share ideas in that subtle way that you're talking about. And I think probably most people, that's how it is. Some people are just like really sad and they need some sort of validation, and comedy is one way for them to get that, so that's another motivation for why somebody might do it. But I do like to share ideas, and I think that's really kind of the nature of comedy, or at least the approach,
Yeah, and I would say comedy is one of those weird things where you do just get a ridiculous pastiche of human culture because you have the self-appointed geniuses who are here to tell it like it is, and like we said earlier, they've just not realized that nobody gives a shit what they think, and they've got to actually try harder, stupid. Then you have, as you said, there's people who are like, I can't afford a therapist, but you guys are going to listen to me because I got my 5 minutes. So you got that crowd. And then you do have a bunch of different creative, artistic people who, and some of them would rather be writers, some of them would rather be musicians, some of them would rather, but this is a place where they get their time and they get to connect with people. And if they do it well, like nothing feels better than just like getting off a gig when you've slayed. Do you know what I mean? I've come off stage and it's stupid. It is stupid. But I've come off stage and I've thought, fuck me, that gig changed the world. Those people, never going to be the same. What a gift. And it's like, you're a fucking schmuck. They're forgetting that tomorrow. But in the ride home, you're like, nah, I've changed lives today.
People rolling out of there just like they'll never look at the world the same way again. Like that dick joke blew my mind right out of the back of my skull. I've seen in open mics and the freedom of expression. I think that's a very beautiful thing about comedy. Like I've seen guys go up there after they got off a dish shift, and not even have a microphone, but just yell at the crowd, and people do magic or, other types of just artistic and creative things. So I really appreciate and enjoy the expression, the fact that people have that opportunity to truly express in a free way, as ridiculous as it can sometimes reduce to. It's still a very beautiful thing. People who don't have, a voice. So, in like the mainstream, they can go up there, they can tell their story. If it's funny, if it's not funny, they still have the opportunity. So I think that's a very beautiful thing.
Yeah. Do you know what's funny? You mentioned people who get up on stage without a mic. Back home in Australia, that was a massive deliberate device for me, right? Because sometimes you're on a lineup with 50 other comics, it's a long ass night. Sometimes it's open. If you're at an open, sometimes the crowd don't even know comedy is going to be on. So you've just ruined their night. And then the people before you suck and you don't want to listen to them. So why would anybody who didn't even know this was going to happen? They've just bought dinner and they're like, how quickly can I finish this steak and get out of here? You know what I mean?
I've been there. I've done it. I've been the guy ruining your dinner.
100%, right? And one of the things that I realized sort of maybe it was kind of 3 years in doing those sort of gigs is that particularly as a straight white guy where there is you're no different to the like 80% of the people who are on that lineup, and most of them suck, right? Not most of the comics suck. They just happen to look and sound like you. So how do you differentiate yourself in that environment? And one of the things I realized is if I didn't use the mic and I kind of spoke a bit softer and I changed the energy a bit, it's a really good way to buy them their trust for one joke, just enough curiosity for one joke. And if that joke is good, then they'll listen to me, hopefully. And usually they would listen. And if that joke sucks, well, then I'm sorry, fuck, there's nothing I can do now. I'm just another of the people ruining your dinner.
Right. Well, at least you kind of fade into the backdrop if that's the case, right?
Yeah, exactly. At very least, I'm less annoying than everybody else.
Right. It's definitely worth taking the risk. And so
Yeah.
at least at that point. Yeah, man. No, it's dude, it takes a lot of guts. And people tell me all the time. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. Yeah, it does. It takes a lot of nerve to get up on a stage and, yada, yada, tell people what to think.
Yeah.
And it does. And it's horrifying too. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if it's really the best use of time, right? I wonder, like, maybe I should just be at home, like, I don't know, like learning how to like make bread or something, just something but on those nights when, somebody does enjoy what you have to say, or you make a connection, or, we have a good night, like it does feel really, really good, as strange as it is.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I don't want to say it because it reflects poorly, but there is a degree to which it is narcissism, right? It's like, I am so fucking good that I had them eating off the palm of my hand. And there is a part of you that it is, you mentioned validation before, there is a part of you that for some reason, and to be honest, I often wonder if I never got on stage and then you transported me, like I never got on stage and then you time travel me to today and then let me do a week of gigs, would I still want to do gigs, right? And I don't know, but once you've got to the point where you've done those gigs and you've felt that way, it's like a hell of a drug.
Yeah. I mean, well, so I've done improv too, and I feel like I'm a lot more comfortable in my skin doing improv. And, you read a book like Truth and Comedy, for instance, and it talks a lot about improv and, it's a Second City type of book. And so, it talks a lot about just like how calculated that stand-up can be. And so like, it's just a different art form than something like improv, where you go on stage and you're just like, all right, here we go. And I think that the standards of the audience for improv are like much, much lower too. But being able to do that and have that experience, I think there's something to be said for the endurance that it takes. It's like, I don't know that my college degree is very valuable, but the fact that I was willing to be disciplined enough for 4 or 5, 6 years it says something, that I'm willing to, discipline myself for a long enough and it seems that everyone who embarks on this, like most people are not naturals. There may be a handful, but most people are working at this for 5 to 10 years before they really get to the point where they can really kill,
Yeah. I think you're right. And the funniest thing is watching somebody who thinks they're a natural do their first gig. Oh, the Schadenfreude is just, oh, it's delicious. You could serve that on bread and people would come from miles around. Oh, it is so good. You just, and to be fair, the reason it is because we can all relate to that feeling and we all remember not realizing how hard this was. But there is something about somebody who is the funniest person in the room outside of a comedy experience, and then getting up and just not like watching it come over their face that, oh, this is actually so much harder than they make it look, it's endearing, and it is it gets you through some bad gigs.
It's satisfying. No, that's very true. You know, like I can remember like the universe played a great joke on me where the first time I did stand up, it actually went pretty well. And I was like, wow, I can do this, you know, like cool. And then I bombed for a year and just ate shit, you know, like at almost every gig, even at the butteriest room, you know, like you go and wind up being like the 24th, 25th comic up, you know, and get up there and think of a funny idea backstage, you think, and then say that, you know, joke in front of everybody, and just like it falls so flat. And then it's just like, oh man. So I got 5 more minutes to just dig out of this terrible joke that I just threw out there that I thought was so funny backstage, and just does not connect at all. My friends are here. My dad's here, you know?
Yeah, there is. And particularly if you've had an experience that was good. And particularly if they were at that gig and they can't figure out the difference of like, why isn't it working? And then they start to doubt themselves for laughing the first time. They're like, no, maybe I was the idiot. Maybe these guys are right.
Yeah, one night my cousin was like, man, why don't you just go up there and be yourself? I'm like, bro, that's what I'm trying to do. Like, I swear to God. He's like, man, you're just not funny up there. I don't know what it is, you know, like you were funny the first time. It's like, and that's exactly what you just said, where it's like, I had a decent night the first time I went. I had this whole bit, you know, it was all ironed out, and I've been practicing it 400 times. Then I'm like, oh, I'll just, you know, free flow a little bit, see how that goes, to maybe do some like joke writing on stage, like you're talking about, like having that pressure. And, it didn't go so well. It didn't go so well at all. And that was kind of embarrassing. But I'll never forget that, like my cousin being like, dude, you know, and also he said, like, don't be the smartest guy in the room. Again, it was like that I'm trying to philosophize and like put myself in this place where like I know something and I'm trying to share this valuable nugget of wisdom. It's like, that's not the way to do it on the nose, right? Like you gotta, you know, put that in a subtle subtext kind of way. So it's a process of learning, that's for sure.
100%. There's a couple things in that I think are super interesting to pick up on. Is one, like the smartest guy in the room thing. One of my best mates who I used to write with back home, it took him so long to realize when he asked me what I thought of a joke, that if I said, oh, it's really clever, what I meant was, it's not funny.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because he wanted to hear that. And it took him a while to realize, oh, when you say clever, that's not a compliment, is it? And I was like, well, you know, it is if you want it to be. I just don't think that will work on stage. And it took him a while, because I'm not going to go, actually, you know, mate, this is, no, yeah, it's clever. If that's what you want it to be, that's what it is. And whatever. So that's the first. The second thing is, in terms of your cousin and that sort of stuff, I had a quite similar experience where early on, like in my first sort of 3 months, things went quite well. And then I reckon I would have been somewhere between 3 and 6 months in, and I was in the final of like this newcomer comedy competition. And so I brought everyone I know. I was like, nah, this is it. This is like, everyone gets to see this. And I won that competition. And like, looking back, it's ridiculous, because one of the dudes who was in it, like, is like a Hollywood movie star in Marvel movies now. Like, wow. He's gone on to be like, I feel like the guy who beat Jordan in a game of pickup in high school, you know? And then another couple people in that competition are like slaying it in the media at home and stuff like that. And so that gig went so well. And then about 6 months later, similar to you, I just lost the mojo. I don't know what it was, whether it was rhythm, I think maybe to begin with, you learn your 5 so well and so inside out. And then the minute you lose the energy and the passion and you can't perform that well, you have to realize how hard it is to write 5 minutes. And actually, you're not just going to be able to reproduce it like that to begin with. And yeah, so I had a similar situation where after that gig, a couple of mates were coming who'd seen me slay to like 500 people in this massive competition environment, and then doing a buttery room with like 50 people, just had to watch me stink it up. Oh. And you have to look those people in the eyes and be like, I don't know what's happening here either, man. I wish I did. I wish I could tell you, but
yeah. Yeah, it's like my cousin's like, dude, you're the funniest guy I know. Like, what's going on? Why can't you make people laugh on stage? And it's like, dude, I'm trying to be myself. He's like, just be yourself up there. You know, it's like, well, that's like your mom giving you dating advice. You know what I mean? Just be yourself, honey. You know, it's like, well, mom,
Yeah.
it's so frustrating, but awesome too, because if it wasn't so challenging, I don't think that we might be drawn to it, right? Like the challenge of it is like, that's the sport, otherwise what would be the fun or the point? Because it can be drudgery. Let's be real honest. Like remembering and memorizing the speech that you're going to go up on stage and tell to people, like, it's not what I think a lot of people think it is. Actually, frankly, it wasn't what I thought it was. And my friend James too, where he said he saw George Carlin one night and he got tickets the next night. And he was so mad when he came out of the theater because it was the exact same set both nights. And he was pissed, and I get that. Because like I was watching Richard Pryor as a kid and Eddie Murphy and Carlin and Bill Hicks and Mitch Hedberg. And so like those were huge influences on me. And I thought I would never be able to do comedy because they were so funny, because they just went up there and just came up with all the stuff off the top of their head. But that ain't what's really going on.
Yeah. Do you know what was the biggest mind fuck for me in that regard is a quite well-known English comic who does a shitload of crowd work. And so I thought improvised. I've only ever seen him do theaters, right? And then I saw him do a smaller room where he was doing actual stand-up, wasn't doing crowd work. And after the set, I was like, oh, why didn't you do any of your crowd work? And he said, I can only do it in theaters. And I was like, what do you mean? He was like, well, in a theater of 5,000 people, if I ask the person in the front row what they do for a living, and he says he's an accountant, and I say he's a bike salesman, what happens is 4,980 people think he's a bike salesman, and 20 people realize I lied to them.
Oh my God. Yeah. They wrote their crowd work. Yeah.
They wrote their crowd work, and if whatever the answer they got back, they were going to pretend they misheard it and they knew what they were going to say. So it really broke my mind that even that feels so live and interactive and is designed with these two-way bits, even that sometimes is not happening live and on the spot.
Yeah, that's crazy to think about. And there are some great comics out there. Andrew Schultz comes to mind. I see a lot of his like crowd work stuff that he does. And I think that when you get in that energy too, like, and you're just in the energy, the world of funny, like Kevin Hart lives there, right? He's got all these funny people around him. And as I've worked as a producer in comedy for a lot longer than I've tried to like make comedy, like I would be in a writer's room, and there's one really funny dude, and he's hired 5 people who are funnier than him that he's pitching jokes to, and they're telling him what's funny and what's not. So it's, not to pull the curtain back too much for people who like love comedy, but like it's a whole thing. But like when you live in that world, like a Kevin Hart, for instance, he's got all these funny people around. They're just constantly riffing, it's like if we were on tour together, like we would just be constantly just saying jokes and over and have several other people who are buds who are just like, just riffing all the time. And then when you get in that energy, I think it's a lot easier, and so now we've all been stuck inside for a year and it's going to be real awkward.
It's going to be so bad, dude. I mean, this may or may not be something you want to cut from the pod, but I was guesting on a show recently, and again, I was riffing. I was the first time in a while that I was feeling that like boom boom energy, and the guy asked me a question that was like, if you could recast a movie and every other character was Muppets, but one person was still a human, what movie would you cast that way? And because, when you're around comics, you want to see how far you can push it before even the comics go, no, you can't even joke about that. So he goes, what movie would you, everyone's a Muppet except one human actor. And I'm like, Dallas Buyers Club. And it's like, oh man, I'm going to have to learn how to like where the line is again, because for 12 months, you've not you've not had the line. You've not had to live with the horror of someone going, no, I don't like what you just said.
Right.
So it is. Do you know what? It's interesting because again, we talk about like philosophy and performing and stuff like that. There is the weirdest person who I'm ever going to quote, but I quote him a lot when I talk about stand-up, is Roger Federer, the tennis player.
Yeah.
Because when he was winning all the tournaments, right, no one would challenge him, whatever. And then when Novak and Nadal kept beating him and he couldn't win anymore, I remember in an interview after he won for the first time in like 4 or 5 years, and he's like 36 or whatever, and it's been ages. And one of the commentators asked him, like, what did you do differently? What changed? And he said, for my whole career, I could aim for the lines, and your natural safety mechanisms means you pull it in just a little bit. And that was good enough. I was good enough aiming for the line and being a bit safe. And then all of a sudden, these guys came along, and if I was a bit safe, they were hitting it back. So what I had to do is learn how to miss so that when my safety mechanism kicks in, I'm hitting the line. And I think that is one of the things that you want to do with comedy. You want to learn how to push it just beyond what you think is safe, because that's where it's going to be most interesting and that's where it's going to be most funny. And if you learn where that your uncomfort kicks in, but their comfort ends, that's perfect.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's like calibrating. It's like such a fine line there. And I think I would pick like Jurassic Park, because I think it would be funny if all the except for Jeff Goldblum, who's like, you know, puppet life will find a way. I don't know what would happen. You know, he'd be dropping something. But like just digging through puppet shit, you know, like she's sick. She's sick.
Miss Piggy being eaten by a raptor. Oh my God.
It's so fun. But yeah, dude, you got to calibrate. And then when we're around each other as comics, we can push it so much harder. Is so true. Like the aristocrats, right? Like that whole joke is like, how nasty can you get? Like how dark can you go? And so like I have friends like that where I wouldn't dare say some of the things that we've said, you know, like even like with, you know, certain people, you know, passing and things like that, where we've said just horrific things, you know, Kobe Bryant, you know, and just said horrific things. And to us, like in that very intimate, closed space, it's very funny, but it's not something that I would publicly, you know, unless somebody wants to hear the jokes, just send me an Instagram message. But like publicly, you know, broadcast that, because people would be so upset. I think like I really like oh man, what is his name? Tony. He has that man, oh my God, I wish I could remember his name because he's so like offensive, and he's got that Monday night.
Anthony Jeselnik.
Anthony Jeselnik is excellent too, as well as, and Daniel Tosh, I think, is he pushes it pretty hard. But there's somebody that I'm thinking of who works at the Comedy Store, and he's got a Monday night thing, damn, I wish I could remember his name off the top of my head. I saw him a couple of years ago with my friend Wendy, who's from Australia. We went to the Comedy Store and hung out, and he basically just cleared the whole room. Yeah, he has like a Monday night thing there, or used to, I guess, back when the Comedy Store was in operation. And basically you would come up and you'd have all these comedians come up and they would tell like a 1 minute, you know, and then they would critique him, you know, and you have a guest and they would critique these people from the audience on their like 1 minute or whatever. Anyway, he's really, really funny, but like really savage. Apparently had like a whole security group of people around him when the Kobe thing happened, because he had written these bits. And when I saw him, he was even like clowning on the other comics. He's like, you know, like the difference between me and these other comics, you know, you might want to see some of these other guys again, you know, you might, you know, what he say? Something about like Ice Chucker or something. And he like just even railed on the comic previous to him and was like, really, really, really savage. And I think like the Comedy Store is like a special place for that too. It's like some of the stuff that those guys can get away with on that stage are pretty advanced because they're on the cutting edge of comedy. And if you even went to like an open mic or, you know, a place that was open-minded, then I don't know that you could get away with some of the stuff that they, you know, were talking about, you know?
it's a really interesting balance as well between like, I think comics hanging out with each other. But this is the problem, right? A lot of new comic nights, a lot of opens, you end up performing to 90% comics, and they're not, as you just said, their sense of humor is different because they're listening to jokes all the time, so they have to push it harder to make each other laugh. But you don't want to tell the jokes that make other comics laugh because you don't want to perform to other comics all your life. But then it's a weird proposition between how do you make audiences attend those nights, the new comic nights, enough that it kind of fosters a good environment for people to grow and feel safe and try each other, like try new things and allow audience to see new comedy, versus then running the risk of like, if that goes shit, some people, because I don't know what it's like in the US, but the UK and Australia definitely, some people walk into a comedy night and they don't know the difference between like a pro amateur night and a pro night. And if they see, you know, even a professional comic trying new gear and sucking, some people walk away and going, I guess comedy sucks. I guess I don't like comedy, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Sorry, go ahead.
No, but so it's a really, it's a weird balance that we have to like try and always remember, is that like you want to try new stuff and you want to push it, but you also don't want to be the person that makes somebody say shit like, no, I never go to gigs, I hate comedy. No, there is comedy for you. You just try again, you fucking quitter.
Right. You just need to go to like Chuck E. Cheese and you know, see the comedy there at Chuck E. Cheese. And it's interesting. The gig that I have coming up, like April 3rd, is at a distillery in the mountains of Georgia. And so, you know, like, know your audience, you know, and, it's going to be an interesting show. They want it to be like, you know, PG-13, which that's no problem. I'm good with that. But like, it's just interesting because, you know, what jokes am I going to tell? I'm obviously, you know, I can't get into sort of like edgy, current events types. Like the people that live in the mountains are probably not the progressive thinkers that, generally speaking, might, you know, be in a comedy club, you know, so it'll be a little bit different, you know, like I might have to talk about like hanging laundry on, you know, clotheslines and stuff or something. I don't know, you know, but
do you guys go to the shops? What's the deal with the shops?
I mean, they'll definitely be drinking moonshine, you know, so there's that. So maybe we can talk a little bit about that. But yeah, it'll be interesting because like I have several other comics too that I'm bringing up. And so like I'm booking the show. It's, you know, it's my bill. So I'm trying to get like the right group of comics, but obviously I want to be, you know, representing everyone who, you know, and all of that stuff too. But it's like, if you pick the wrong comic and they go up there and they get political, you know, now all of a sudden you're never invited back to that place. And like, it's a paying gig, you know, like I was at a coffee shop show the other couple weeks ago, and the only rule was don't say the F word. And so the second comic gets up there and he just can't fucking help himself. Like he's like, fuck you, bitch, or something like that about his ex-girlfriend. And it's like, dude, like we just sat here and listened to the rules of the show, and you think it's so funny to break the rules, but like that's really immature and silly. Like that's not very professional, you know?
And you fucked it for the rest of the comics, because if the audience hate the night, it was one of my first gigs when I moved to the UK. So I've been, with the exception of one night, which was this gig, I've been vegetarian for nearly 10 years, right? And one of my first gigs in the UK was at a vegan restaurant, and I was booked fourth. And the first three comics, the first two did it accidentally, I think. They just didn't put two and two together. And they had stories about traveling and eating meat. And then the third comic did it just to piss people off because they'd started heckling. And I came on fourth to a crowd that was just baying for blood. Like they hated the comedy and they felt personally offended by the fact that it was happening, and they wanted everybody involved to have as bad a time as they were. They were evil, vindictive fucking little shits, right? And so I got on stage and I was like, hey guys, I'm actually like vegetarian, please don't hurt me, I'm one of you guys. And they were like, even at that, they were like, nah, you're just like, they said I was lying, and they were just like, before I even got into a joke, they just wanted me gone. It fucking sucked. It's the worst gig I've done in years. And as a vegetarian for this long, I remember I got off stage and I was like, I don't want to be one of you. And I went to a chicken shop and just chowed down a bucket of chicken. So I was different to these fucking losers.
Yeah, man. That's wild. Yeah, I mean, sometimes I get it. Like, you can't help yourself, right? Like the nature of comedy is to get ever so close to that line, if not crossing it. And sometimes it's maybe a little easy to cross, you know. But yeah, I mean, even when I ate vegan, I was like, I'll never be a vegan. You know what I mean? I eat that way, you know, but I'm not.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. That's a really good differentiating point, right?
Yeah.
It's not your being. You're just like, that's your dietary choice. Why you gotta have a whole way of being just because you?
Right.
It's so weird.
Yeah, you're gonna alienate yourself from every other human being in society because of how you eat. You know, and I think it's romantic and beautiful, like even fruitarianism, you know. I'm like, dude, that's awesome. Have you heard of breatharianism?
No, please
Bro,
don't.
I swear to God, it's a thing. I swear to God. And I'm writing a sketch. I'm going to write a sketch with Will about it because it's so funny. We were laughing the other night because like it's an actual thing. People who are like, no, I'm a breatharian. You know, so like we're going to create this restaurant where you just go up and like somebody just breathes soup smell in your face, you know, or like breathes like, you know,
garlic bread. Just the waiters are just constantly eating garlic bread.
Yeah, that's right. Cheetos. Oh, you know, like, that's so good. That's good breath. Like, oh my God, dude. Yeah, there are people who think that you can like your body can photosynthesize and stuff. And I mean, like I said, that's super romantic, like fruitarianism and opening up your energy levels. And I'm all for that. Like that might be like something that you could do for a few days or something like that. But like you can't do that like sustained, you know, like you gotta eat something, you know. Like,
do you know what the worst thing about the breatharian one in particular, which I've only just heard of now, but listening to you tell it, what I'm imagining is that there is some rich wellness fuckhead who is selling this to everybody, and then the minute the IG live stops rolling, they're bag of Cheetos, bag of Doritos, like and all these people are like, no, that person does it. I see them. I watch them on Instagram every day. Yeah, for like a minute. For a minute, they're breatharian. You know right. What? Me too. Like, I eat a lot. I eat too much. I'm a fat man. But for like 12 hours of the day, I'm a breatharian. It's just in that other hour, I shove a shitload of food in my face.
That's right. It's just the baby bird idea is like, oh yeah, just the drive-through, you know, you get just like a big whiff. Oh, you know, like a chicken smell, you know, that'll be 10 shekels, you know. Oh my God, it's so ridiculous, but so funny. And dude, some of the stuff that we experience day to day in reality at this point is gotten so out of hand that it seems like it should be comedy, like wearing like multiple masks and stuff. It's like, dude, really? You know?
Yeah, it's so fucking hard as well. Just like, because what so often happens at the moment, and you know what, I was speaking to a psychologist who deals with exclusively conspiracy theories and the way people get into them, and one of the things I asked, because this is my theory, and he's like, there's no research. I'm like, well, what fucking help are you? But one of my theories is that, you know, usually we didn't know our friends had weird views, because when you have to go into the world and say something ridiculous, kind of like being on stage, when you have to go in the world and say something ridiculous and watch people go, you're not right, then you don't want to say it anymore, right? But at the moment, we're all at home. We don't have to look anybody in the eye. So we can say as much dumb shit as we want, and we don't have to watch people judge us for it.
That's a good point. Yeah. You know, there's that like call and response, you know, like
Yeah.
it's like blues music. And then, you know, if you're so off base that people are just like, you know, you hear the record scratch, you know, you're just like, wait a second, like, no, that's not.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's being walled in. And when this whole thing first started out, like, that's like my mind went nuts because I was like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what I'm being told is anywhere near accurate. This person has this idea. This person over here has this opinion. It's just like so confusing and you know, disorienting. It's like like a tailspin. You're just like, oh my God, like what is going on? But yeah, it is nice, and it will be nice, I think, to get back out and have a little bit of, you know, interaction with people. I can't wait, man. I'm like
social interaction, pulling everybody into line. Like, stop being weirdos, you idiots.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I mean, I just like, I'm an introvert naturally, but I've been in my house so much and for so long that I'm really starting to identify with Joe Biden. Like, I just want to go out and sniff everybody, bro, you know? Like the whole room, like, oh my God, it's just a smell of another, you know, person, you know, like the energy. Like, I really do like picking up on the energy of people in crowds in small doses. You know, like, I don't want to be around a crowd all the time, but it's like, you know, I'm around and I get to feel, you know, that energy being, you know, as part of the group. And I really do like and miss that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you know what? Do you know what's been hard for me is that Australia, like, they've had a couple, like maybe a couple of hundred COVID cases, and maybe in Melbourne, where I'm from, they had the longest Australian lockdown. It was like 2 months, but they're at music festivals now, man. They're like, it's summer. They're like, life is normal there because they nipped it, and then it's normal. And it's weird being here where, like, it's been illegal to visit a friend for 12 months and you're at a music festival. Get off it.
Yeah, dude, that's brutal. I mean, I live in the South here in the States, so it's been a little bit more lax. So we're allowed to still go out and do some things, but different places are obviously different. But I'm really excited about like the spring. Things are starting to pick up. Like I said, you know, I have actually a gig, and I'm so excited. Do you know when you're going to be able to start performing again?
So we got our roadmap out of lockdown this week. And I believe that gigs will start again around May 12th is roughly when they're projecting that'll happen. And I think we were speaking a bit before we started recording. I think I want to give it a couple of weeks just to go in as a punter and just really get that vibe again and be like, what are people going for? And just because I like I said, I just put out the special right before we went into lockdown. So I kind of was ready to burn that material. And I don't know if I'm going to have to just like learn on the job again by performing it, or if in those couple of weeks I'll be like, no, this is where I think I'm going with it. So I reckon it'll be June-ish. So it would have been what I did my last gig last year at the end of Feb. So it would have been nearly 18 months. Yeah.
Wow. Damn.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited. I can't wait to get back out there and bomb hard. It's going to be great. You know, until the ride home when I'm just like, damn it, why couldn't I remember my punchlines? But, you know, just to have the opportunity, get back on stage, you know, feel human connection, contact again. That's not digitized. But I'm excited for you. I hope you get out there and, you know, get the opportunity. And I know, you know, if you had that kind of experience, it may take a few times, but if you've got that kind of experience, you'll get back into the rhythm of things. And I'm sure you'll figure out how to tweak things and whether or not you want to do new stuff or kind of rework the old stuff. Cause it is weird. Like, what topics is everyone just going to talk about Corona on their whole set? Like, that's exhausting. Nobody wants that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing, right? That's what I've been weighing up is like, I don't want to be another dude with a lockdown take because, you know,
How many?
again,
Yeah.
you don't want to be just another face in the crowd. But then on the other hand, like going back to my old gear, like it's so weird thinking about going back on stage again, right? Because my like A1 story, like if I was doing a competition or I knew I needed to kill a room, my A1 story is about Tinder dating a girl, and then she, as a surprise, springs on me that she's a doomsday prepper, right? And when I tell that joke in the old days, people are like, "Oh my god, that's so weird for you! Ha ha ha! How funny!" I'm genuinely concerned that when I tell that joke now, I'm the idiot.
Right. No, that is so funny. That's a great premise, but yeah, the way that times have gone,
Yeah,
completely
it's
changes.
flipped.
Yeah, it
It's
completely
flipped.
changes.
She's not the weirdo anymore. What the fuck am I supposed to do with that?
Well, I like that take, I mean, that's the thing about comedy that I'm starting to really see that, a lot of the obvious stuff is just really right in front of my face and just acknowledging the absurdity. Like, guys, my best joke used to be, and
Yes.
that could be a great way to present it because you could still probably get some of those laughs from the way you told the story before, but you're like, but now I'm the crazy one, so it might be a way to rework it.
Dude, that is such a good hot take. And it's also a great example of what we said earlier in terms of like what's cool about comedy. Take a big idea, make it small, tell it through your story. Well, my story is the world's been so fucking weird that now my story about dating a doomsday prepper, I'm the idiot in.
Yeah.
Really good. That's a really good take.
Very funny. Yeah, that's very funny.
It's a really
Man,
good take.
I am excited. I want to encourage everybody to check out your album, stand-up comedy album. Brilliant. Love it. And Spotify, Apple Music. It's Anthony Jeannot. And I'll have it spelled out. I'll put the links in the show notes and all that kind of stuff. Where else can people find you, Anthony?
So there's the album. While it's illegal to go on stage, although maybe afterwards, I've got a little podcast where I invite comedy mates to interview different academics. So that's called Highbrow Drivel. Recording one on dinosaurs with a paleontologist tomorrow, which I think is fucking ridiculous. Like 4-year-old me is gagging and 34-year-old me is like, who the fuck gives a shit about dinosaurs? It's so weird. But yeah, they're the two main things, dude.
Well, that's awesome. I'll make sure that links for that are in the show notes, folks. Please go and explore, enjoy, and have a laugh. You deserve it. You've been stuck inside for 18 months or a year or however the hell long it's been, long enough that I realize that time doesn't exist. So thank you so much for taking the time, Anthony. You're awesome. And
Yes,
I appreciate it, man. We'll be in touch.
Yeah, this has been so much fun. Thanks, man.